All right, welcome to AT's Podcast Ninja post-production tutorial. Right now you probably just got finished recording your first podcast, and maybe you're not quite sure what to do with all this footage that you've got. So I'm going to take you through my post-production process and give you an inside look on what I found to be the quickest way to go about it. At this point, you have footage from two different cameras and the raw audio from the headsets used during the podcast. First, I'm going to take you through how to organize those files, and then we'll get started in Premiere. The first thing I do is open up the Finder. I have all my files for Piper stuff stored in this hard drive. And inside here, I go into my Going Deep podcast folder. And for this particular podcast, it was with a guest named Austin Webb, and it took place on October 7th, 2019, so I've named it accordingly. Inside of this folder, the first thing you're going to want to do is create separate folders for each of the elements of the video. So I've got exports, graphics, projects, and raw. Right now, we're just going to be working with our raw file because we're going to be importing the raw video and audio files and storing them in here for now. So I've already gone ahead and done this. In here I have my raw audio file. I have camera A, which is the wide angle shot with Aaron and the guest in there. And then camera B is the one focused more on the guest. Then I have an outro file, which I recorded after the podcast. And then pictures that I snapped of Aaron and the guest. So once you've got all your raw footage stored in your drive, nice and organized, I'm going to open up a new Premiere project. Might take a sec, so I'm probably just going to skip forward to once Premiere is all loaded. Okay, so now that Premiere has opened, you're going to want to start a new project. I'm going to name it the same thing that I've named the folder in the Finder. So it'll be 2019 1007, guest name, which was Austin Webb in this case. And then you got to pick where in the Finder you want to save. So I'm going to go back into my drive where I store all my Piper stuff. Piper, Going Deep podcast, find the folder for Austin Webb, and then store it in my projects folder. Then all this information is good. All right, so now that we're in Premiere, we want to create a few bins to keep ourselves super organized with the footage and sequences and everything that we got. So the first one I make is called footage. Next is sequences. And I usually make all of these when I create a new podcast project. Syncs. Graphics. And by the way, I'm just right-clicking in this section to create a new bin. Sound effects. Camera A. Camera B. Audio. And captions. And then save. So to organize these a little bit more, put my camera A and camera B in footage, put my audio in footage, and put them in alphabetical order. So all these bins will come into play as we move on in this tutorial. So the next step is I import my raw footage, which is stored in my drive, into the project. There's a couple ways to do it, but I usually just drag it from the Finder into here. So this I'll drag into my audio, camera A footage, drag into camera A, drag camera B footage into the camera B bin, and then all your footage is imported. Woo! Save again. Quick shortcut for that is Command S. So the next part is going to be syncing up all that footage and making it super easy to pick which camera angle you want and ultimately cut up the entire podcast. So here's how you do that. You get your audio and your 2 camera angles, all your camera B footage, all your camera A footage, and you want to highlight each of those clips. To do that, you select one of them, hold down Command, and then you can click on each one of these and highlight them. Now that you have your audio and all your camera footage highlighted, you right click or control click and scroll down to create multi-camera source sequence. This is going to automatically sync up all your camera footage and audio footage, make it pretty easy in the long run. For my name, I usually pick custom and I call it the guest name. So in this case, it is Austin Webb, and I'll call it sync, Austin Webb sync. Then for synchronize point, I pick audio, track channel 1. I usually uncheck this if it's already checked off. Make sure you set this audio channel preset to stereo. Numeric cameras is fine, and then hit OK. And this process will usually take a little bit, so I'm going to skip ahead to when it's finished. Now that that process is finished, you should notice in this panel over here inside your bins, your sync file will appear. What you want to do from that is drag it down into your syncs folder just to keep it organized. Right click on it and click new sequence from clip. That's going to bring up your synced file into a brand new sequence. But before you go any further, what I like to do is Command double click on this video track. That's going to open up what Premiere is reading from. So it's automatically synced up all of these video files with your one audio file from the headsets. But what I like to do is drag all my camera A footage onto one track and all my camera B footage onto one track. So I just kind of take these little clips and put them onto one track. Want to be kind of careful when you're doing this so you don't mess up the sync that Premiere has already done for you. And you'll notice this little black line pops up along this edge, and that lets you know that you're keeping it in the same place, just dragging it down to a different track. And I do the same thing with my audio. All right, so now I've got this much more organized, bunched into just a few tracks, all my camera A footage on one track, all my camera B footage on another. And then you want to make sure that if for some reason this didn't happen, that your headset audio is on this first audio track. Then I right click over here and I click delete tracks, and I want to delete all my empty and all my empty video and all my empty audio tracks and save. So now that I've done that, I can go back into this sequence, which is being pulled from here, but you don't really need to worry about this anymore. So now the camera selection and cutting process starts. One thing I've noticed is that when I'm playing this out loud, the sound is only coming out of one ear. So to quickly fix that, you can go to audio channels and make sure that this right ear is checked. You can go into your sequence settings and make sure that under audio, number of channels, you switch to 2. Now your sound should be coming out of both the left and the right ear. All right, so you've got all your footage synced up now. What I start off by doing is finding the very beginning of the interview, which is right here at 2:36. Select both my tracks, make a cut there, and this is all basically just chit-chatting before the interview even starts, so we can get rid of that. So here's where the interview starts.
Austin, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. You've had a whirlwind of the last couple of weeks.
Now what you're going to do with this 2-camera footage is switch cameras back and forth when Aaron's asking a question or the podcast guest is answering that question. So to do that, here's what you do.
When did the renovations begin for this base in Braddock? Yeah, so...
Right there, start saying, yeah, so if you want to switch to your other camera angle, you make a cut here. I do that by highlighting the video track, Command K. That will make a cut. Then you select this portion on the other side of your cut, go over here to this panel and look for your toggle multi-camera view. It's this button with the squares. If you don't have that button, you can click this plus symbol, find it in here, and drag it down to this blue box. So back to picking our camera angles. Now you have your 2 camera angles you can switch between. These are all synced up with the audio and video. So if I want to make that camera switch happen right there, I'll select that camera angle. And now, if we go back, boom, it switches. So while you're going through and picking your camera angles and chopping it up based on the answers and who's talking, what I like to do to save myself some time is look for pieces of micro content that we can pull out of this and use as standalone segments. Just like 1-2 minute parts where the guest has a concise answer or explains something interesting. Also, something I look for is the teaser, and that will be placed at the very beginning of this video when we post it on YouTube. So now I've gone through this entire sequence and made cuts and picked out my camera angles based on who's talking at that particular time. I've also I've written down sections that I think will make good standalone micro content, and the final part of this process will just be to add your teaser moment in the beginning, or intro sequence, and then go right into the interview. Just let this play out, and then add Aaron's outro and the Piper's sign-off screen, and that will be your full-length YouTube version. You can export from there. But something I like to do once I have this all cut up and picked out my camera angles, I will go into my sequences, right-click and duplicate this, and then open it up. So now I have an exact copy of the sequence that I just made with all the cuts. And let's say I like a piece of micro content at 8 minutes. I'll delete everything in front of that. And let's say it ends at 9:56. Delete everything after that. So now this will be your micro content piece right here. You have to change your sequence settings to make it a square. So to do that, you click on sequence in the top, come into here, change this to 1080. So now we're looking at frame size 1080 by 1080, 1:1 ratio. This is okay. Now you see I have a square, but everything is out of frame. So to change that, you click on your video clip right here, and you have to go into your effects control panel, and you can change the scale to fit in that square however you'd like. This will change how big it is. This will change its position within the frame. Move it up and down, left and right. And then there's a camera angle switch, so you'll kind of have to position that however you'd like within that square. I think that looks pretty good anyway. But yeah, so you'll just continue going on with adding titles and whatever you want to add to make your micro content. And that's basically it. So thanks for watching. Hopefully that helped.